just to watch it.
This is in 2011.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 5:30, and I will call our work session to order. And I would like to let everyone know that meeting is a hybrid. We have people online and in person, and all of our council members and staff are in the chambers. And we also have the ability to have our residents and anyone else join us by going to burnsvillemn.gov/meetings or watch us on channel 16 or 859. You can also watch us on Zoom by joining us at zoom.us/join. And all of the information is available in our meeting webpage and in our council agenda packet. So welcome, everyone. We, in our work sessions, go directly to our agenda items. And the first item on the agenda this evening is planning, land use, zoning, training for the city council. So Jenny and staff, thank you very much for thinking about us in that way. But as I talk to my colleagues, so I've been around for 2 years in a council, 28 as mayor, and I've been to a lot of training through the land use and through ULI and through the University of Minnesota for land use, zoning, and planning. And I checked with my colleagues, and they have all gone through that. Vince, when he was on the planning commission, and Councilmember Gustafson has already gone through all of that with the land use and also LMC. And Councilmember Keeley has also done all of the training that has to do with land use, and so has Councilmember Schultz. So I understand that you have 75 slides, and I thank you and our team that's here from Stantec. But truly, can you keep it high level and move us through this and get us through in a half an hour? Because you're going to lose us with a lot of that if you're doing a 101. And I don't know, but 75 slides seems like a lot. Even if you go 1 minute per slide, it's more than an hour. Just giving you some information so you don't lose your audience. One of the things that any presenter needs to understand is your audience and what is their level of knowledge base so that they can engage. So with that,
Madam Mayor, members of the council, we will do our best to make this an efficient experience for you tonight. And I absolutely have heard your feedback on how we might better approach training opportunities in the future. And we'll make sure that, I will make sure that we...
talk to us first
absolutely.
about our knowledge base and what it is that we need.
Absolutely.
Rather than assuming that we need something. Because conversing with us, we can give you some feedback about where we are in terms of our knowledge base.
I will make sure that happens in the future, Mayor.
Thank you. That would be really appreciated. And so, Ms. Madden, I really appreciate all the work that you've done, and you're an excellent planner. And also for our team members, it's nice to see Stantec, Jenny, back as part of our consulting team. So it's nice to see them back, and because they've always given us good information. And listen, one of my first teachers was John Shardlow.
One of my teachers too.
Back in the 90s, like 1995, when I went through all of that with John Shardlow. And then I've taken it over and over. So listen, John Shardlow was one of my teachers way back then, and I think all of us have, and so it's good to see Stantec back on our pool.
It is very nice to see you too, and we have heard loud and clear that we need to be efficient with your time, and so we're going to do that. I think, Beth and I are going to kind of be flexible here. We have a few
Yeah.
main.
Is Sarah going to introduce you to? See, I know you. I know. I know the Stantec team, but others. So
We can
Sarah,
do the introductions, or Sarah can do it.
Sarah, you want to introduce? Yeah. So it's good to have Stantec back on the pool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I'm Erin Purdue. This is my colleague Beth Elliott, and we're here from Stantec, our Minneapolis office. We have done this training many times also and can certainly be flexible. And I understand you have a busy agenda tonight too that you want to get to.
Yeah, because you guys have been part of Minnesota Urban Land Institute, and you've put on a lot of these. And we've had a lot of it.
We understand, and also what John has also taught us is to be nimble and flexible to the needs of our audience. And
That's
so
it.
we will, I think what we can do is hit some of the interesting parts and actually see if there's any discussion that the council wants to have, if there's certain examples that's similar to the ones we're going to bring up. And we'll keep it very short.
Very good.
Yes.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right.
Then John trained you guys well.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so Beth and I are going to tag team here a little bit. Our first chunk of information is about legal basics, and I'm going to skip, kind of the why do we do zoning, because it sounds like everybody's pretty clear on the legislative basis for zoning and why we do it.
Or the history of why we started to do zoning, if you go back, if you've taken John's course.
Oh, yes.
Or
No.
the history of how
That
zoning.
course has a lot of slides on history. We already cut most of those out,
Yeah.
understanding that you're a pretty sophisticated community. But one of the things that we had in this section that is actually pretty interesting, Beth is going to go through that as a recent case, and there are some lessons to learn from that, so I'm going to let her go through this. We're going to stop frequently to see if you have any questions too. Beth, I'll let you go through that case.
So
Yeah,
the
you can
reason
say
that I thought this case was interesting is I've been with Stantec for 5 years. Before that, I was in the public sector as a planner for a decade and a half, and I was with City of Minneapolis. And this case, Hoyt versus City of Minneapolis, came up while I was the downtown planner for Minneapolis. Is anyone, Mayor, you're familiar with this case? Are others familiar with this case?
Yep.
Luckily, I didn't have to provide testimony as a planner, but many of my colleagues did. So if you're unfamiliar with this, this is kind of the epitome of a lot of times what councils, how you balance the interests in before there's an application, and when it comes to an application. So this was, if you can think about Loring Park in downtown Minneapolis, right across from the Walker, there's this beautiful hill of historic mansions, and there was a developer proposing a very tall residential tower with some townhouse structures on the bottom floor. And when you can think about that hill, it really does not fit into the existing character. So what the Planning Commission did is the Planning Commission denied all the applications. One of the applications in Minneapolis, they treat height with a conditional use permit rather than a variance, and which means that the onus is on the city to say why they deny a CUP, and they denied everything. And then the developer appealed to the city council, claiming they were denied due process. So there's some great quotes that really kind of epitomize this situation. But at the trial, the developer introduced a variety of emails from a council member to various constituents. Quotes like, "I have already come out against the height of this project. I will continue to represent many voices in opposition to the project. I will do my best to advocate against the appeal." And this is where the council member really got into, unfortunately, some hot water here, because the council member said, "Please do not be spreading the word that I have made up my mind. If the developer hears this, they'll be rightfully questioning it." But the challenge is not necessarily that she came to a conclusion. The challenge is that it was very public, the conclusion, before there was any public hearing or the applications. So the district court decided that the council member did take a position in opposition to the applications and was closed-minded during the hearing, and it was a violation of the due process. And so some of the lessons that particularly we in Minneapolis learned that I think it taught a lot of planners, in particular, and elected officials, is that, we can't make up our mind, and I know this is something that you think about all the time. We sometimes have come to a conclusion. You can't say publicly that you've made a conclusion, right? Before the public hearing. And you cannot advocate for or against a certain part of the applications or the project before the public hearing. And we must remain impartial. And I think that this ends up being gray area a lot of the times when you're dealing with constituents. And I think that in this case, it was very black and white, but it was a lot of, for us, planners in particular, the comprehensive plan allowed that density. The comprehensive plan allowed that density, the policy allowed that density, and ultimately, we always go back to what the policies of the comprehensive plan say if there's a dispute between the zoning and the comprehensive plan. And we inherently take all of our kind of guidance and rules on zoning from state enabling statutes. So we really have to look to the state and how they look at this. And with the Municipal Planning Act, municipalities have discretion in land use, but there's a certain process that developers and property owners expect and the law requires.
Yeah,
So-
and even though we have the comprehensive plan, we already have tools on the table to amend the plan,
Yes.
and we can do that. There's a PUD, there's, depending on a CUP, and, yeah, John should have told you about some really very difficult ones that we had here in Burnsville. One is the amphitheater. The other is the heart of the city.
Absolutely.
Because we increased density, and the people didn't like density.
Yeah. Well, and in this case, I always look at the comprehensive plan as like our rule book, right? But what's challenging about a comprehensive plan that you deal with all the time in your decisions is that it's made to be flexible. It's policy.
Yeah.
So ultimately, in this case, the zoning hadn't caught up with it. Minneapolis is a big city. Planners do not rezone, the whole entire city after every comprehensive plan. So this was a major challenge and a discrepancy between the comprehensive plan and zoning. And Minneapolis has less flexible tools like your PUD, and so that's really where it got challenged.
Yep.
Does this bring up any other topics that you have wondered about relating to discussions with developers and property owners and prior to a public hearing and how that might impact decisions or any other cases like this, as the mayor said?
The most recent, well, we had the Berean Baptist Church, but a lot of that is a lot of also conversations with the neighborhood. One of the things we do well here is engaging the community in conversations about what they want. What does the neighborhood want, and what does the church want? It's their land.
Right, and it's so important to do that, I think, while you're doing the comprehensive plan, so
Yeah.
that everybody is on the same page, if you can. And so, so that you don't run into these things that come up in accordance with the comp plan, but the people don't want. If you've done a good job with engaging during the comp plan, then you won't have so many of those problems.
Yeah. Well, and even with projects, we engage the community. I mean, because they reach out to me, and I'm sure they reach out to others too. And we have the conversation. What is the problem? Find the obstacles that are in the way, and then find the solution
Yeah.
and move forward.
Where do you draw the line, though? Because we've got a blighted property in Burnsville where I think all of us kind of have an idea of what we would like to see there. And we've had 2 developers come to us in the past and brought us projects that we all kind of collectively just said,
Wasn't a good use.
don't think we like that. But that was kind of predetermined based on what I think the council is looking for there.
Yeah.
Sounds somewhat similar to this case where I guess we weren't publicly announcing that prior to them coming, but that seems like a gray area with regards to this.
It
But
is, and
I think it's about having a vision. We have a vision for that particular property, and we wanted high-density mixed use, and they were just bringing a multifamily housing. that doesn't fit the vision for that. And it's the same thing with the, what is now known as the Center Village, the mall. And that was an engagement with property owners, community, and all of our stakeholders. And
Yeah, I
putting a
think
vision in place is another way of looking at that. It's in the comprehensive plan. And we adopted all of the regulatory tools around all of that, so we
Yeah, I
have,
think as
we
long
have a
as-
method of moving forward.
Yeah.
As long as your vision is public and
Yeah.
it's in the comp plan, you've
Yeah.
made it a matter of record in your
Yeah.
public conversations,
Yeah.
it's in the zoning, then you've done what you should do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the problem was, in this case, having conversations with constituents and making your predispositions
Yeah.
to an application public before the meeting.
Yeah.
Everybody has a right to due process in a meeting and have a public discussion.
I think the gray area that you mentioned too is if the zoning code, if the comprehensive plan allows mixed use on a site, right? And a developer comes with just residential, what triggers do you have in your zoning code to require them to do that commercial along with the residential? If you feel like your planned unit development allows you the flexibility to negotiate with the developer to get that commercial, I think that is the trigger. But if your zoning, if your policies say we want mixed use, but your zoning allows a mix of uses, but doesn't require a mix of uses, that's where it can be challenging.
So you could get yourself in trouble by over-concentrating mixed uses in certain areas if you are sure kind of
Or
what
you have to
you're-
write your language carefully. If you, as Beth said, if you have a mixed-use district that allows a wide range of uses, including a single-use, high-density residential, then you're kind of tying your hands to a wide variety of things that a developer might propose. If you want to really require mixed use, vertical mixed use, then you would need to say that in your ordinance or be firm about negotiating that in a PUD.
Well, the other is that we have a couple of principles. Highest and best use of the property, growing the tax base.
Yep.
Everybody knows that because that's our language. We want to grow the tax base and highest and best use,
Yep,
and we talk about that.
wonderful.
So it's not, so developers know that if they're going to come, what is the highest and best use?
Right, right. Well, this next section, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on because I think you all know as a community what kind of support your staff provides, what the role of the planning commission is. I know we have a few new planning commissioners that are watching remotely tonight. But in short, your staff are your technical experts. They're the ones who do this 24/7 and can provide you, professional recommendations. The planning commission is where all the public hearings are held. They make recommendations to you, and then you make final decisions on all of your land use applications. And so, as long as everyone knows and respects what expertise they're bringing to the table, I've seen some city councils that, kind of try to bypass the planning commission and do their own thing, and that's not good. So you need to make sure you have good people on the planning commission that you trust, and to make recommendations to you. Not that you always have to agree with them.
Actually, we have good policies in place. If it comes to us from the planning commission unanimous, it goes on our consent agenda, unless one of us wants to pull it for a separate discussion and vote. Otherwise, we trust them.
That's
We
right.
hired them, we appointed them.
Yeah.
And our staff trains them. And if we don't have the confidence in them, then
Right.
shame on us, and then we have to make a different decision.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I think you summed it up well. The only other thing I'll mention, and we kind of talked about this with the case, is, making sure that all of your discussions and your consensus building and your deliberations happen out in public. Everyone has a right to know what you're thinking and how you make your decisions, making a good public record, and that goes for the planning commission and for council.
No, our attorney tells us that all the time, and I
Oh,
always
I-
ask, can you defend us in court? And if he says yes, we're moving on.
It's good to keep them on speed dial. Yeah,
So you know the tools that you have available. The one thing I want to say is particular about the rule books. What we're talking about is your comprehensive plan, your zoning code, your subdivision ordinance. But we are very lucky in our region that our comprehensive plans get updated every 10 years. We may not feel lucky when we're in that process of it with all the rules coming from Met Council, but Aaron and I work on with comprehensive plans that are 20, 30, 40 years old that don't match any of the zoning. And that's when there's a real legal challenge on the day-to-day decisions that a council may make. And like I said, we always fall back on the comprehensive plan. And so if you are judiciously doing amendments to your comprehensive plan, that is the right way to go. So, if there's a certain site that, the council has a vision on, doing a comprehensive plan amendment is the formal process to really realize that vision. And ultimately, if there are with the zoning code, if there's certain variances that you are always approving to parking, or, that was the project I worked on with you, you should look at your zoning code and update your zoning code. Because if there's too many exceptions to the rules, then that's a time to update your code.
We have a task force working on all of those things.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I remember that from when we were both doing individual work with you, that there was a list.
Yeah.
So that's the primary component that I want to say, that these two, the zoning code and the comprehensive plan, obviously work hand in hand. And they need to be, to match each other and kind of be looked at frequently. And it looks like you already do that.
Yeah, you're about a quarter of the way through your zoning code update, as I understand.
We got 2 years to go.
No, we have about a couple of years.
Yeah.
Okay,
To do
so
the
maybe
work
not,
because
maybe
they-
not a quarter of the way, but,
Yeah, because they work, it's once a month
okay.
and coming together, because it's pretty voluminous.
That's a tough job.
And so we have a team of
Yep.
citizens working on it.
Fantastic. All right, so we'll dispense with, because you already went through a comp plan update relatively recently.
Yeah.
And so the last segment here is about uses and applications, and a lot of this is pretty basic. I think you all understand the types of uses that are in your ordinance, but just to make sure, there are principal uses, which are the
Yeah.
main things, and accessory uses, which automatically go with those things, like a garage goes with a house, right? There are principal and accessory uses, and then there are also permitted and conditional uses, right? And you're all familiar with this. Conditional uses have to go through your planning commission and come to you for approval, but permitted uses you can just do right away.
Yeah, permitted uses, I think a lot of that, Jenny, we do it administratively.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yep, wonderful. Interim uses, the only thing that I'll point out, the difference between an interim and a conditional use is that you can put a time limit
Yeah.
on an interim use. So if there's something that you want to tie to like a particular business or a particular owner, you want to use an interim use permit, because a CUP goes with the land
Yeah.
and it stays there forever, so. But the review criteria are very similar.
Yeah.
Non-conformities, I know that when I worked on the Heart of the City ordinance, that we spent a lot of time thinking about, okay, we don't want to do anything with our ordinance that creates non-conformities if at all possible, right? So these are the structures or the uses that were legal at the time, and then we changed the ordinance, and now they don't conform with the current regulations. And the main thing to remember here is that they're allowed to continue. There's no reason that they have to go back and conform unless they're trying to expand, and that's
Yeah.
when you.
And I think as you see more and more redevelopment, you will see more and more legal nonconformities as your comprehensive plan and your zoning code change, and it's not
And there are
something to be
tools
scared of.
And there are tools available to
Yes.
do all of that, and it can be done.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yep. So you've probably seen that if John Shardlow gave you a good training 10, 20 years ago, you've probably seen this.
Yeah, the pyramid.
The pyramid of discretion, right? And you guys are, finished your comprehensive plan a couple years ago and are diving into the zoning stuff now. All the rest of it is either quasi-judicial or administrative, and you have a great staff that supports you with all of that. But the big conversations happen down in the Orange area, and sounds like you guys are well into the second tier there.
Yeah, and especially we're about 98% built out. So you know, a lot of our work is around variances and,
Yeah, right. Well, and trying to figure out, you know, redevelopments or expansions of uses or intensifying properties that are already being used for something, but, you know, they want to improve themselves, make themselves better. So this non-conformity stuff is important. And yeah, bringing sites slowly into compliance with your newest ordinances is something to keep in mind too. Yes, I'm sure you probably see a lot of CUPs and variances on individual properties rather than like a big new neighborhood somewhere, right?
When we were working on the parking ordinance with you, one of the issues was commercial spaces that were being released to uses that were more, that had a lot more parking needs. And I think that is just a and it was perfect timing to work on something like that and evaluate how do you actually, what tools do you have to enforce a parking standard when there's a release of a commercial space. And so that's probably more and more of what you're going to see are these uses that we don't expect going into leased spaces.
Yep.
you know, and our property owners, like Target, they came to us and said, we don't need all that parking.
Right.
Because they look at where their experience begins is at the curb and in the parking lot. And so they want a more pleasing atmosphere in a parking lot, more green space than parking, and they didn't want all of that parking. The
Sounds
other
like there's
thing,
some-
things have changed quite a bit, you know,
yeah.
it's,
I was going to say, there's fantastic planners working for Target now. That's great.
Yes, I know. No kidding. Well, so the only thing that I'll this is one of those interesting points that I want to make sure to cover is when you're creating findings of fact, when you make a decision, and this starts with the Planning Commission and ends with you all, it's important to have valid findings of fact that relate to what's in your ordinance,
Yeah.
right? So things like these are appropriate, you know, whether it's consistent with the comp plan, that it meets the practical difficulty standard, you know, that it fits in with the character. All of that stuff is good to have in your public record and your findings of fact. What we see a lot, whether it's in the minutes or in the record or whether it's just a conversation, is, well, this person lived here a long time. What they're doing
our
is
attorney would never,
yes,
never
very good
allow
attorney.
this.
I'm sure, right? Yeah, like
Really nice guy, no.
what's the big deal? Let's just let him do what he wants to do. There are a lot of cities that do that, and it makes us not only attorneys but planners just cringe. Yes, and so I'm glad your attorney is on top of all of that. Even if you're denying something, you have to still remember this findings of fact, and not. The key here is that if you have a lot of opposition to something, that also doesn't necessarily mean that you need to deny it. The reason that you deny something is because it doesn't
Hey,
fit.
I've been hung in effigy because of the, yeah,
Did you
the,
get a picture taken next to it?
oh, yeah, and it was outside and they were
Really?
burning the effigy outside, and this had to do with the amphitheater. And, oh, and John Chardlow was working with us at the time, and that was, yeah.
That's why you have consultants to help with buffer you against that kind of thing. No, but really,
So-
I mean, what you need to base your decisions on is what are in those rule books that Beth was describing, and not just, oh, there's neighborhood. I mean, sometimes neighbors bring up valid points that you can consider in your finding of fact, but that's not the only reason that you would deny something. And I think you guys.
Yeah, we didn't deny it even when Bloomington says, we're going to take you to court. Okay, do what you need to do. And they got some of our residents
Right.
to do that,
But it's-
and then because they didn't like when I says, well, you know, you do what you need to do, we need to do what we need to do. This is a valid application. Did all of the sound studies, everything that was required. They spent a lot of money on all of that. So we moved ahead and all of the environmentals were all done. It was a good application.
Right.
It would have been good for the city of Burnsville.
Yep. So yeah, as long as you stick with the rules, a lot of times you hear good things from the community that can contribute to how you understand a situation. But at the end, this is what you guys get paid the big bucks for, to do the analysis.
Us with someone else.
Clearly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I will wrap up.
You know, you guys are good. I said 30 minutes and you did it.
Mayor, we have a lot of practice being nimble.
Well, right, and
So St. John, he didn't retire yet, has he?
No, he still works full time.
Yeah, because
We're not making him come into the office anymore. He's John, right? You know, you let John do what he wants to do, but he is doing amazing work.
well,
well,
good,
yeah.
then his email address is still the same and
Oh, it is,
I'll
absolutely.
shoot him an email.
Yeah, well, you know, if you guys have any, you know, issues that you want to bring up, like I said, I know planning commissioners are watching, so we're always available for an email or a quick call if anything odd comes
Yeah.
up.
Yeah,
We just want to be a resource for you.
yeah. Kara, you have any questions, anything that burning in your heart that you want? Any burning questions?
Not really. I don't think it's any secret that I'm not a fan of zoning, period.
Yeah.
I'm just not. Especially in a city that is built out. You know, and believe it or not, there are cities that simply don't have zoning and they thrive and they do well, and so but I do understand that this is the system we are currently working within, and, you know, we'll just muddle through zoning.
That's exactly an appropriate way to say it. Zoning is muddling.
Yes.
Yeah. Councilmember Keely? No burning questions? Councilmember Workman?
Oh, this was helpful. I don't have any burning questions. Actually, I just thought of one. How is the city of Minneapolis handling getting rid of their residential zoning codes now? Is that gonna pose problems for them?
Minneapolis is not getting rid of residential zoning. What they're doing
Striking.
is they're getting rid of the single-family residential zoning district, the R1 district. And it's a lot, this goes to the point of how do you balance zoning? Minneapolis is trying to allow more flexibility in its residential neighborhoods for duplexes and fourplexes, buildings that still have that height and kind of the character.
The same mass as a house.
Yeah,
But they might have more units, yeah.
but it's still very expensive to build on a little lot, so probably won't see a lot of that. But they're tying much more form-based elements to their zoning than they've had before.
Yeah, I live in Minneapolis, well, and we both work there, and I haven't seen a huge, I think there was a fear that there would be a huge boon of single-family tear-downs and
Yeah.
people building like threeplexes or something. That hasn't happened,
Th-
to
this-
my knowledge.
It was the same situation when accessory dwelling units were allowed in Minneapolis, and a lot of cities have followed suit with ADUs, and they're just difficult financially and physically to do, and so they work in some situations, but not a lot.
Yeah. Interesting. Just projecting what Burnsville might look like in a few years.
Councilmember Gustafson?
good.
You're good? Ladies?
Thank you for having
did a
us.
fabulous job. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Yeah.
Stay safe
High
with the
level
storms
was very
tonight.
good. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah. Okay. Our next item is a report, and this is one that's really terrific, and this is Kramer Mining and Material coming and talking with about their development plan. And Ryan Peterson, our Public Works Director, is going to start out, and we have a wonderful guest, one that, Mr. Ribisto, that we know so very well. And so, Ryan?
Yeah,
The
thank you.
floor is yours.
Have a seat. You can sit there if you like, or you can stand. It's totally up to
Yeah,
you.
no, have a seat, John.
As you know, the Kramer Mining Materials was given approval for expansion of the mine to, that will have mining going on there for more than a decade still from now. And we felt that the council and community would be interested to see and hear about how Kramer envisions development occurring there and what might be some of the triggers that they would use to start actual moving away from the mining and towards a final end-use plan. So John will go through and help both you and the community understand what that looks like. And I guess I work with John quite a bit, and Kramer's been a great partner with us on delivering water, and they're in very good hands with him running the show. And we continue to make collaborative progress on things that benefit both our city water supply and their mining operation. So with that, John Aristo, President of Kramer Mining Materials.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Well,
Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks
Yeah,
for,
John.
for having us here tonight, or me, and representing Kramer. As you know, 60-plus years we've been operating a quarry here in Burnsville, and
We have to have a celebration,
it
60
should
plus
be
years, you know?
1959 we started, and here we are, 2022. So with,
Yeah.
if I'm doing my math right, that's a little over 60 years, and not without hiccups and challenges and pushes and pulls, but we're in a really good place right now, and we really support the city of Burnsville, and we really do that because we appreciate the working cooperation we have with staff and council and everybody else. It's been really good working through problems, and that's what we do, is we're constantly problem solving. And there's a lot of questions that are often brought up to me, whether I'm working on the city drinking water sump expansion or the PUD amendment. And it was interesting listening here. I was thinking, IUPs, CUPs, PUDs, amendments to PUDs, amendments to amendments. We got some things that we're gonna have to address in the comp plan
Yeah.
in the southwest corner of the quarry as we mine through that section where Simstone and the mulch store is. There's gonna be a different use there, obviously, long-term. So all that sounds really familiar, but the questions are all often coming up. What are you guys doing next? Where do we go from here? How many more years of mining do you have? And the answer often is, that all depends. You know, there's a lot of variables, and I wanted just to go through some of the variables that we as Kramer Mining are discussing and working on long-term plans for on a daily, weekly basis. So with that, I will proceed, if I figure this out right. Just a quick overview of the quarry and the operations. Just so everybody knows, is that mouse? There we go, okay. So I-35 over here, to east of the quarry. Minnesota River is north of us. Freeway landfill, Superfund site is also to the north of us. This is Kramer property, which will never be quarried or mined. This is a freeway flood fringe. This is the quarry. Simstone's down here in this corner. This is the city sump, which Ryan and team and me and my team are working on the expansion of, which is, I'd say, going along quite well. Our operations on the floor of the quarry, and this all represents about a 500-acre tract of land, of which about 350 of it will eventually be a pristine 100-foot deep lake in the South Metro right here in Burnsville. Pretty excited about that. So what are the questions, what are the things that I'm often asked? City reservoir expansion, how does that impact the life of the quarry? It adds about 5 to 7 years of additional mining. The breadth of that expansion, the depth and the area, it's about at the rate that we utilize that level of aggregate in our quarry, that represents about 5 to 7 years of additional mining. It's about a little over 2.8 million tons of limestone that'll come out of there. The big PUD that we just worked with the city on recently to get approved was, the biggest chunk of that is the 35W mining. And that, there's a couple items here I want to discuss about. One, we were talking about IUPs and CUPs, and we talked about the reason why we needed to bring in material used for reclamation in large quantities and have that material ready on the 35W site is about 7.5 million cubic yards of material we'll need to reclaim that site so that we can bring it back to a developable grade as rapidly as possible after we mine the aggregate out of there. It added about 13 years of additional mining, just that expansion on the 35W site. And please interrupt me if.
Yeah, one of the things is that we've always talked about, John, with regard to the reclamation of the site and an IUP, is accessibility, because at one time, didn't we have a road, was it 117? That we were going to try and see if we can put a ramp in there so they'd have access to the to the site and for long-term
That-
development?
Absolutely, there's been discussions about an interchange
Yeah.
along in that area.
Yeah.
Also possibly a pedestrian access across the interstate from east to west. And that was part of the discussion
Yeah.
of freeway landfill, if that becomes part of this whole development as well.
Because when you're going to talk about some infrastructure, if you're going to start building, reclaiming the land and start an IUP for buildings on that, it's how you're going to access it, what kind of infrastructure you're going to be putting into that. Right now,
Comprehensive plan shows how that may lay out. It's very schematic in nature.
yeah,
And I would say we'll be back with Kramer's to figure that out in the future.
we
as
just
get a
need to
little
make
closer.
sure that we don't forget that.
No, it's a big part of this long-term, and
Yeah.
it is, it's conceptual right now, but we have a lot of excitement about the future development of that, and that's why when we looked at the value of the limestone and extracting that limestone, it's just something the South Metro is, needs. And so let's get the value out of there, but then let's not shoot ourselves in the foot and destroy
Yeah.
the beautiful development value
Yeah.
adjacent to the lake along the interstate. And so that plan was hatched with
Yeah.
conversations with
Yeah.
me and you folks.
Yeah.
And problem solved. How do we get to a solution where we get the value of the limestone and yet we preserve the tremendous development value along that lake and along the interstate? And we came up with a really good solution that we were proud to be part of. Freeway landfill, I get asked that a lot. I don't know, you don't know, nobody knows. We laughed about it yesterday. I never heard you laugh out loud so loudly in a public, Cubs food of all places at the deli counter. I'm an optimistic guy, so when you asked me, will we get somewhere with this? And I said, I hope so. And holy cow, I never.
I said,
my hearing
hopefully in
aids down.
our lifetime.
Yeah, in our lifetime, I don't know. I mean, we've been mining here for 60 years and we still got 30 more years or so of mining, so, if I see it, it'll be a medical miracle. The timing of that, there's so many wild cards on that, right? We don't know.
That's very optimistic, John.
Yeah, I've been solving problems my whole life. Most of the problems I made myself. I have to solve them, so I've gotten pretty good at it. One of the questions that often comes up is there potential limestone underneath freeway landfill if we were to remediate the
Yeah.
waste? And would they feel confident in leaving the limestone in place? Is it gonna be contaminated by leached
Yeah.
material that it works its way through a porous stone? Common sense to me says probably. Would we have a plan in place to mine that limestone? Absolutely, we do. And we can talk about that more when it's appropriate. But yeah, we do have an idea and a concept in place on how we mine through and remove that limestone underneath there. It creates a more attractive shoreline. It creates other value to the development. We've all seen the renderings, right?
It would be wonderful.
Yeah, it is. It would be incredibly wonderful. One of the things that it's a variable and it creates a bit of a challenge for us is this right here is a completed silt basin. That was wash plant fines that have been stored there for the last 25, 30 years. It's about 65 feet deep. There's earthen berms, engineered berms supporting those fines material. If we were to mine north through that north wall and underneath that limestone, we'd have to come up with a plan to remove a lot of silt. And also a lot of that material that's part of that earthen berm. So that's a big variable we don't have solutions for yet, but working on. And that's why when I say we're not certain how we're gonna approach freeway landfill if that opportunity comes about. In all the PUDs, or in the PUD and all the amendments, that area where the silt basin has also been kind of identified as a green space, whether it be soccer fields or a park or whatever. It's a significant, big area. If we do mine through there, then what do we do for green space? I would
Isn't that
still.
also where the park is, the beach is being identified?
The beach is conceptually, and we've been planning for it, is this
Right
area
around
right here,
there.
Madam
Yeah,
Mayor.
close to that silt basin, yeah.
It'll be a big quarter
Yeah.
circle shaped beach with a real gradual slope going down into the lake, near the development, close to the green space. But again, if we mine through that north wall, then what do we do for that green space?
Yeah.
We don't know. We'll work together to figure that out.
We have time.
Right. This is one of the more recent ones that have coming up, is the future lake elevation and that variable. All along, we've been planning at a future lake elevation of 690 feet. The mean sea level for Minnesota River to our north is about 688. That gives a natural fall, so the lake will always drain to the Minnesota River in conditions that are rising. Now we're looking at, do we have to hold that at a lower level, at 680 instead of 690? It creates a lot of challenges that, again, we're gonna have to solve, and I'll get into those in a little bit. One of them is edge treatments, and the other one is this natural connection to the Minnesota River. We can't make water flow uphill naturally. We have to do it mechanically. That's a long term for forever. That lake, if we have to maintain it at a lower level, will have to be pumped up and over and into the river, because it won't naturally flow uphill. And I'll show you that on a schematic, some cross sections I have. The progression, as we look at this slide, the progression just in big blobs that are our planning and that we plan around. The beige colored areas are what we will be mining complete. We start on the west side. You see it goes from tan and then beige. I'm colorblind, so deal with my description of colors. You can see the city sump in this area. I'm pointing at the screen and nobody can see my hand. This area right here is the expanded city sump. And if I go back, you can see the city sump here is much smaller. When we expand the city sump, it'll include quite a bit of this area out here, as you'll see there. So Ryan and the team he has with Barr and Black and Veatch have done a great job. We really appreciate the attitude and the work that we're doing together on that. It's pretty exciting, actually. That's the progression. Northwest to southwest, west to east, to include the 35W site. If you see, we're going to start mining on where's my cursor at here? The south side, we mine from south to north, and then we'll be reclaiming that as we go. This is actually the handiwork of some of my technical team. This is actual
that.
graphics from our drone.
3D.
Just again, for orientation, this is not the Atlantic Ocean back here.
That's
This is the edge of the world from our perspective. 35W.
Yeah,
35W, this is the mining site, the interstate. We're looking essentially southeast in this perspective. This is the ramp that comes down into the quarry, and our offices are right over here. So this wall, we have to leave a big chunk of that in place so that we retain the reclaimed fill
Integrity,
material
yeah.
that will support 30-story structures on the future development. So a lot of this, the next progression is, you can see the wall of limestone, which is 100-foot wide, is left in place, except for a small opening down here. We're mining from south, near our offices and where Martin Marietta's asphalt plant is, to the north. This is material that we have secured over many years to then backfill and reclaim the site. It's it'll be engineered compacted fill. And then we mine all the way to the north end. If you recall, in the PUD, there will be a hydraulic trench mined and put in place along the interstate, parallel to the interstate. That hydraulic trench essentially creates a barrier to protect the Black Dog Fen from the dewatering efforts from the city's sump and Kramer's ongoing dewatering efforts. That was something that was a condition that was put forth, and Barr and my team put together a solution for that, which is pretty novel, using a big hydraulic barrier. We'll constantly be pumping water into that trench to keep it an active hydraulic barrier, and the Black Dog Fen on the other side of the interstate will be protected. Then the site will be fully reclaimed, like I showed in the previous slide, there's 7.5 million cubic yards of material that have to go in there to bring that back in.
Material.
The cross-section through that site, here's that 100-foot bedrock wall that we'll leave in place, the future lake to the west.
Yeah.
And this is the reclaimed backfill area. And these are to scale, 20 stories is what, I think I said earlier 30, it's 20 stories is what Bar Engineering said that this site would support engineering-wise with a 100-foot bedrock wall. Freeway landfill.
Yeah.
I don't want
I
to
love
make
this.
the mayor laugh any more than she did yesterday. This is still our dream. This
Hey,
is the
I still
vision.
love our the vision for it. I
It's
still
a
love
great
it.
solution, you know.
It's a
and if the-
wonderful solution. I love the vision.
If the state can get their motors running in the right direction and we can get things happening, this can truly happen. Everybody on the Kramer team believes this is not a panacea, we can make this happen.
Yeah, I know.
Future lake elevations, I just want to show this in depiction because a picture's worth of at least 1,000 words. This is the section that we've been working along with all along. Our edge treatments and the PUD and amendments have depicted this gradual slope, holding the lake level at 690 so that pedestrians and users of the lake don't walk into a 100-foot deep lake.
They
right?
don't drown or drop.
And then in relation to the mine, our dike roads, the flood protection dike, the Minnesota River 688 and 690, that works. Water flows downhill.
Gravity.
If we have to hold it at 680, now if you look up above, this is now 680. Our edge treatments that we've been mining and working along all along will create now a 100-foot drop-off. So we're gonna have to work with the city and staff to adjust our mining in that 30-foot of the meander line and our edge treatments. Otherwise, we're gonna end up with exactly what we don't want in that big drop-off. So we're gonna have to mine back a little bit farther and taper that edge so that we have, it's not just for pedestrian safety, but that shallow area is the little area for a lake. That's the habitat, it's the growth, it creates all the things that the fish and all the little animals in the water want, right? And they need to survive. So we have to talk about that. We're not there yet. And again, in the lower part of that slide, at 680 and 688, we have no way to naturally fall. And we've looked at this in a broader scale and said, can we divert the water in a different direction and get it back to the Minnesota River without going straight north over the dike road or through our pumping systems that we have now? And I don't think it works. We'll work more with Ryan and his team on that, but that's a challenge. That's a big variable they have in front of us.
Yeah, I'll go to Ryan and then I'll go to Dan Keeley, and then
Just
I'll
a
go to Ryan.
Question, if you could explain for the viewers, what was triggering the change from this long-sought 690 that now has to be 680?
Yeah,
Groundwater. Ryan, do you want to answer
Yeah.
that? But
Well,
it's-
let me at least start. I don't believe John was saying that 680 is the number now.
No.
I
Yeah.
think this was, if we had to go down to it, that's
Yeah.
what this would be, so.
what the challenges are.
We are not, at the city, we are not looking at 680 at this point, but if we are at 690, there could be some other mitigation things we'd have to do, so.
Yeah, we need gravity.
Related to the flooding presentation that we were given, how are those related,
Well,
if at all?
flooding might be more concerning than I think actuality, Dan, but it's a concern, right? That the models show that at 690, the groundwater table
Yeah.
rises to a level that is concerning, whether it be flooding or just water that's moving in directions we don't want it to move in. I'm not sure yet. You know, it's still a model and it's a study. And so the discussion has been, could we hold the lake at a lower elevation? And how does that impact the groundwater?
Yeah.
Is that fair, Ryan?
I think it is, I would just say that we are currently getting our modeling results and getting out to agencies and property owners. The next phase of study will be mitigation measures to if we wanna be at 690, what are we gonna have to do? So we don't have groundwater going into basements and, having our pipes inundated with water. So, that's where we're at.
And I think there is plenty of proven engineered ways to deal with 680. There's some real simple solutions that we just have to come to agreement on regarding the Kramer property. And how do we move water at those elevations to where we need to move it? We can solve those problems,
690,
Okay,
yes.
690, okay.
yeah.
Just, this is questions for my own and other benefits as well, because we were presented that circumstance of where the water table would be. And you noted the river is at 688.
Right.
So 690 is only 2 feet higher, right? Doesn't sound like much. What, and this might be a geological question, I apologize. What causes the river to be at 688 but doesn't present that same water table issue on those properties down by the river that 690, 2 feet higher with the lake suddenly does?
I can't answer that. I really can't. I'm not sure exactly, if it's just the bedrock formation between the river and everything, down south of that. I would think it's more geological,
Yeah.
barrier. But you remember, in flooding conditions, the river's
Yeah.
much higher than
That's
688, right?
And the salt property
Yeah.
really
It's almost
understands all
underwater,
of that
right.
and how that
And
impacts their.
I don't, when those flood events happen, like the yellow freights and everybody that's down in that area, they're not dealing with water tables flooding
No.
their property or anything, so even though that water table with the river comes up quite high, it doesn't necessarily always pose an overall water table rise in that entire area. But the lake seems to be one that suddenly, at least forecasted as having that effect, right? The lake goes up, that causes flooding everywhere. The river goes up, it doesn't really cause
Well,
flooding.
we've been dewatering at 3 billion gallons a year, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and we've artificially lowered, we've seen that with all the MPCA studies on freeway landfill and the impacts and the protection of the water, that we've artificially lowered, that point. The deepening and the expansion of the city sump will also help in that too, is that'll actually become the deepest, place that the water is drawn from within that whole footprint. It'll be deeper than anything that we have that we mine, so that'll be beneficial to this process as well. But, us as a 100-foot, 350-acre hole, and with pumps at the bottom of it, we do a lot to keep those flooded conditions from going south.
Sure. Thank you.
That
Ryan?
answered?
So I'm not a hydrogeologist, and I won't pretend to be, but, good, yeah, that's right.
But did you stay at a Holiday Inn Express?
At some point, Ryan, just say yes.
Yes, I have.
Then you
but-
can proceed.
Thank you. I think it's the fact of the surface water aspects of the river and moving on through compared to the water literally coming up from the
from the
groundwater.
groundwater,
It's gonna
yeah.
take 6 years to fill up that
Yeah.
lake, and I think it's that groundwater moving up that gets it more than the surface water
Yeah.
moving
And
through.
it's coming from underneath rather
Yeah.
than water that's
Yeah.
flowing over the top.
Yep.
Yeah, and you all have spoken to that. It's that groundwater as it
It
comes up.
is. Yep.
And then when
Stop
we have the
pumping,
flooding, it's, yeah.
When you stop
And that's
pumping,
where the
it's-
water
Yeah.
table was. If you look at the pictures
Yeah.
that Kramer has on file from when they first put a shovel in the ground in 1959,
Yeah,
it was a marsh. That whole area
Yeah.
around there was, wetlands, so.
yeah. Well, you only have to look over to the east side of the freeway when it starts to flood and you see what happens over to Black Dog. And how many times have we seen that road go underwater and then it becomes a huge issue to clean up the mess?
Snowplow
Now-
silt.
Huh?
We're snowplowing
Yeah.
silt.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
We enjoy that in the
But
summertime.
now we have Excel take care of the road. It's now their road.
It is.
Sometimes silt is a really fine sand, right?
Yeah.
Might be good beach materials.
We got a lot
It's
of
been
it.
sitting
Yeah.
in the bottom of this other.
Yeah,
Needs to dry out.
yeah. Okay, John.
So, and the last point, that's a variable that we're dealing with, or not really dealing with, but we're now mining with this in mind, is prior to the PUD and the bar study that just recently looked at the depth of the quarry. They have been monitoring and looked at a lot of data for a lot of years. The water table pressure, we have piezometers throughout the quarry that measure the pressures of the sandstone, the Jordan sandstone, and the aquifer underneath. And the original depth of mining was based on their belief and their engineering calculations at that time, what the pressures were. When we asked them to go back and reevaluate that, they have said that the pressures in that area are much less than what they originally estimated in their engineering data, and therefore have revised their depth of mining recommendations. And that is the information that we are using now, the conclusions and finding in Barr report. And it was the same hydrogeologist that did it originally. It's a very well-respected team at Barr, to include at the point of that Ray Woolow. And so his conclusions, findings, recommendations were that there's estimated 3 to 11 more feet of rock that can be mined across the quarry than previously estimated. Doesn't seem like a whole lot, but over,
Yeah.
350 to 500 acres, 3 to 11 feet make a significant difference in the value of the asset. So, and they have suggested and recommended, and we are in the process of installing additional piezometers to continue in more data points measuring that pressure. And if we ever see any increase in the uplift pressure in that, then we would immediately cease mining to it. It's 3 to 11 feet deeper than we would. But the whole trick to that, from a simple engineering and a buoyancy, is you have to have enough mass on top of the uplift pressure of the artesian Jordan aquifer to keep it in place and not crack and fracture and flood the quarry. And that pressure is less than what they originally engineered many, many years ago. And so we can take a little bit more of that mass out and again, make the most out of the asset that we have. These are a busy picture, but the 2014 data that we used, this is the depth of mining, 21 is the new. And this graph, though, is what we're now using as our basis for drilling and blasting and mining. What you see on there in the northwest corner, it says minus 11 feet. That means in that area we can go 11 feet deeper. In that area, we've already mined through that area, so we're not going to be, but we can go 10 feet deeper than adjacent. And you can see these contour lines based on the varying pressures throughout the breadth of the quarry. This is what our plan is now. So it's a little more rock. That's what I have. Those are all the variables that we deal with on a ongoing basis at Kramer, and I am here to answer any questions that I'm able to.
John, I don't have any questions. I just have comments to make in thanking you and your team in continuously working with us on solving all of these problems, because at the end of the day, it's about your property and the value that it's going to have when you're done mining and the mixed use. So what it is that we need to do to partner and work together. What I've always appreciated is that when you come, you give us good information. Now, sometimes we may not agree on some of the things, but one of the things that I really appreciate, John, is that we work through the problems, identify what the obstacles are, and then find the solution that will be good for Kramer and for the city.
And I can speak for ownership. They also appreciate that. And they send us four to the wolves, and it's not that at all. We have these conversations. It's a very cooperative. We solve problems. We don't always agree on everything, but it doesn't create barriers. It just, if there's a problem, let's solve it. If we can't come to agreement, let's move on.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
been
Dave
good for us.
Kramer really established a great culture in partnership, and where there were some challenges, we worked through all of those together. And we just had a little hiccup in some of the transition that took place. But those are solved, and ownership made some decisions that was very helpful to all of
I
us.
have file cabinets full of those hiccups in my office. So it's been good. I do appreciate the cooperation
So-
and the ability to pick up the phone and call any of you
Yeah.
council,
Yeah.
mayor, staff.
Yeah.
I've never been intimidated to pick up a call, pick up the phone and make a call to any of you, and that's very helpful.
Yeah. See, the thing is, it's about all of us working together
Amen.
for your good and for the good of the city. At the end of the day, that's what it is. It's not about power and control here.
No,
Yeah.
I agree.
So I thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you very
again,
much.
you've come and, you're consistent with your message.
Well, they told me I was, they just pull a string on my back and I start talking, chatty Cathy, so, thank you all very much. Have a nice
Yeah,
day.
wait, Dan Keeley has a
Hey, John,
comment.
just, thanks for giving this update. This is very comprehensive and really, it's been a while since we've looked at something like this. And I'm glad you put that billion-dollar development idea in there too, because that certainly looked a lot better than the green pyramid that the MPCA is continually proposing. And I wanted to just thank you for your approach to working with the city. You've been great to work with. Your predecessor was great to work with. But you're always, willing to have a conversation and support the community and have open, transparent conversations about what the mining operation is and what the future holds. And if you're going to be there another 30 or 35 or 40 years, so be it. Construction and development in our
Not me
area.
personally.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we want you there to the end of it.
Well, the thing is, you're
Medical
building the
miracle.
culture. You're continuing the legacy of David Kramer.
Yeah, we do have a good team over there.
And Dave Evans.
Yeah.
Rest his soul. But no, thank you. I mean, it's great to have, with a massive operation like that, an aggregate operation of that scale, it's great to have a relationship that we have, and that's thanks to yourself and your predecessor that has always, nurtured this relationship and been very productive and very mutually respectful. So it doesn't matter if we disagree, we can work it out through mutually respectful conversations, and there's never any question of the integrity of either side, and that's nice to have.
Yeah,
Thank
Feel
you.
the same way,
Yeah.
thank you.
love working with you. So thank you so much for coming in.
Y'all do.
Before we get to the next item, we are going to take a 7-minute break. We'll recess for 7 minutes and come back. Okay, welcome back. We're back from recess. And the next item on the agenda is the Phase 3 Facility Study Introduction of our team. Garrett Beck, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Facilities, is going to introduce the team, and that is the nature of tonight's report. Garrett, floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Council and Mayor. I'm here tonight to take us through the Phase 3 facility study. The introduction I'm giving right now is actually going to be appropriate for the second study, the introduction that's coming up after this. We're actually running 2 studies simultaneously with our consultants, and I'd like you to have the opportunity to meet both of them. So, real quick, our agenda, I'm going to give a brief history, talk about our core team, go over what our guiding principles are for our projects, and then turn it over to our consultants to introduce themselves and talk about what the plan is for the study. So our history, about a decade ago, we actually got really intentional about looking at our existing facilities. A lot of them were 25 to 45 years old, trying to figure out what the existing conditions were, how do we plan for our CIP to maintain them, and how has our community changed, and what are the needs of the community for the next 20 to 30 years. And so we did that by doing a study that actually had 4 of our buildings. It was City Hall Police, our 2 fire stations, and our old maintenance facility across the Civic Center here. And the result of that was we completed that study through 2014, and it was accepted by council in 2015. From that, the police project was identified as the highest priority, and so we started that in the planning for that in 2016 and completed that in 2018 from a construction standpoint. The Phase 2 construction project was Fire Station 1, which we had deemed had reached its end of life. And I'm pleased to share that our fire department was able to move into that facility earlier this year. And just a public service announcement, we have our grand opening for the public on May 7th, which is a Saturday. So feel free to join us at that. And that fast forwards us to today, the Phase 3 study. So over 7 years have passed since we did the original study. A lot of things in our society and in our workplace have changed, and it made a lot of sense with all those changes to look at the 2 buildings that were in Phase 3, which was City Hall and Fire Station 2, to redo those to make sure that things are accurate. And then also our maintenance facility is now 22 years old, and it seemed appropriate to get that involved in this process as well. So that's kind of what we're talking about tonight. So our core team, our core team is really about setting the strategic direction for the project, working with not only the staff members but our consultants to really help us figure out what that strategic direction is, and then also as issues arise, that group helps to make decisions on how we navigate through those issues. Real quickly, our core team members are our city manager, Greg Lindberg, community development director, Jenny Faulkner, public works director, Ryan Peterson, our police chief, Tanya Schwartz, Tom Venables, our IT director, Carissa Larson, communications and community engagement director, Carissa Bartholomew, human resources director, and then we also have Jeff Raddick, who's our assistant public works director, Dan Hill, who is our maintenance supervisor, who works on all of these buildings, and Daniel Tintner, who is our interim finance director. So this group is meeting weekly, almost on, and occasionally we cancel those meetings if we don't have a need to meet, but doing a lot of work to help us through this process. And then obviously the consultants are an important part of that core team as well. Our guiding principles, so in 2016 for the police project, we established guiding principles. They're essentially setting our values for the project with the idea that, everything that we do should be able to feed back within those guiding principles. And we've talked with the consultant, not only are they very aware of what they are, but tonight's presentations, they'll talk about how they're looking at this study through the lens of what our guiding principles are and helping us to navigate that information. So real quickly, I'm going to get them all up here at once because our consultants are going to go through them a lot more in detail. But here's a look at our 8 guiding principles for both of the studies. And with that, I'm excited to introduce Susan Morgan is with BKV, and their firm, we were extremely impressed from the city's perspective on the team that they brought together to help us through this process. She'll go into detail on who it is, but it's an excellent group of individuals, and we've had a pleasure working with them thus far. So, oops, and there's clear communication. All right, Susan, take it away.
Wonderful.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you all very much. Glad to be here tonight. So for the City Hall Police and Maintenance Study, our team is led by BKV Group. We've been working with municipal clients since our founding in 1978. We are specialists in police, fire, public works, municipal facilities, and our partners on this are our TEL architects, specific expertise with public works assessment, Kraus Anderson, who is our partner on this, both for cost estimation, for the facility assessment, and for providing that strategy about how to phase the potential projects once recommendations are developed. And we're also working with True North for technology consulting, because that's a really critical part of facility success. So as Mr. Beck noted, for us, the guiding principles are a lens for the action and the priorities and the recommendations that we develop. And so what you see on screen was our team's start at actually paralleling the principles into components of facility planning and space needs. So picking out a couple of these, that when we talk about a space that's healthy, we're really concerned with indoor environmental quality. When we talk about sustainability, it is both a building performance aspect, but it's also a longevity and a responsibility. And so for us, all of these are things which come into play in every step of our process. Going through, I just want to note, you're one of the few cities that has a plaque like you do outside of the city council chambers, that this building is for the people. And so as we talk about this long-term investment.
It's the people's house.
Exactly. And so it is really critical for us that that is in the forefront of our team's mind as we support these plannings and these recommendations. We want to make sure that facilities are supporting service delivery, that they're encouraging people to connect with resources, that we continue to follow through on the commitments that the city has made for sustainability and wellness, and being mindful that spaces need to be both welcoming, inviting, and also safe and secure. And so part of that folds into both our assessment and our planning recommendations. For planning outcomes, we really are mindful of 2 sets of users. As much as the buildings must and need support the community, they also must and need support your staff and the work that they do, both collaborating with one another and providing distinct services. So our goal here is to assist you in understanding and planning ahead so that you can be proactive with your investment in facilities, and that it isn't as something breaks or as something fails, you have to react to it. You can actually plan ahead to accommodate changes and evolutions in service, and that it allows you to be fiscally responsible to actually parcel out your projects in ways that allow you to manage your investments over time. So our approach is sort of multifaceted, and as you see, the guiding principles are, of course, the umbrella to this. In an assessment study like this, our team is working on multiple tracks at once. On the one hand, there's an analysis process. We have to gather the information so that we can really be a tool and a conduit for objective recommendations. So that's taking in information from your facilities, from dialogue with your staff, even as you see at the bottom, even engagement as part of analysis. And then at the end, we go through a process of cost estimation as well. So on the one hand, you can read this diagram as a series of parallels, the analysis, the critical path milestones, the assessment and engagement, but you're also seeing kind of color-wise how this also, there are tasks in each tract which come together. So we're looking at the buildings as physical resources, we're looking at the spaces for how they support your operations, your functionality, and your service delivery. And then for us, the heart of this is an exploration as needed of space plan recommendations. That's either interior reconfigurations, that might be some recommendations about investments in the exterior of the building or the site and the landscape. And that we proceed in a way that allows us to engage both you as key stakeholders, to connect with other community stakeholders in the broader Burnsville community, and to feed all of that information into a set of recommendations that we then structure through a series of phasing if needed and through cost estimation. And then there's this object, a final report that you get to use long-term over time for implementation. On this next slide here, this is mapped to a schedule, and you can see in another way that there are these parallel tracks. The key pieces to point out here is that as we're doing our work kind of inside the walls of City Hall and maintenance and public works, we're also starting to work outside the walls. Our community engagement happens at 3 points. Starting right now, we're connecting with the community for primary visioning. Once we have options developed, we will share them with the community for input and feedback. And then once we have the voices of both the community and yourselves, we hone into either a single option or 2 options, most typically, and then proceed with that final kind of evaluation of phasing and costs. And I actually got ahead of myself here, so I'll be even shorter on this slide. So our goals with stakeholder and community engagement are, first of all, that we're establishing transparency. This is a public project. We're investing in public facilities long-term, so it's critical that we have those voices that we connect with. On the one hand, we're doing that to be transparent. On the other hand, it's really important to gather those multiple voices and multiple perspectives. Each of you is used to using this building in a certain way. That's a particular voice that we want to connect with. We want to connect with the folks who come in to pay bills, and we want to connect with those people who don't currently utilize City Hall, that aren't aware that it's a resource, and that it's a way to connect both to resources and to governance. You're seeing here a list of stakeholders, and again, that reaffirmation of the potential project touch points that we're looking at. To summarize where we are today, our focus in phase 1 to gather that visioning is we're doing that at a grassroots level. We're providing comment cards that are available at your service counter. We have and that's a short 4 or 5 question little survey. Those will be available for folks like Crystal Lake that's renting a space downstairs tonight. Those will also then go out into kind of key community meetings in the near term. Phase 2 may or may not be a digital survey or a public open house, and for phase 3, we'll look at the methodologies that we utilize. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any questions? No? It's good to have the information in the process, and thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay. Very good. The next one.
Didn't you just get a fire station?
He's back for another one.
Well, it's good to see you again. Okay.
All right, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. So, again, this is the introduction is the exact same. We're running this parallel, and so I'm going to jump to the introduction of our consultant for the study for Fire Station 2. Quinn with CNH Architects has been an absolute pleasure to work with for the last 2 years now. He's been part of our team that helped us design and construct Fire Station 1, which has just been a great addition to our facility system and for our fire department. So it was a very easy decision when we were getting to this point to invite Quinn back to the table to be part of this study and to work with our team. He has intimate knowledge of our organization and of our operations, and it's just going to help streamline this process. So with that, and I will say, as I'm flipping through, our core team is our city manager, Greg Lindberg, myself, Terry, and BJ for this particular project. So it is not the same as the ones for City Hall and Police. With that, Quinn Hudson, CNH Architects.
Welcome back, Quinn.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Nice to be here tonight. I look forward to it. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity again to extend our relationship with the city of Burnsville. As Mr. Beck mentioned, we've spent a lot of time working together on Station 1, but we've also reached further back to the ABLE training facility as well, and look forward to future projects as well. So thank you for that opportunity. And okay, just as a quick overview, I'm sure remember some past experience, but we're Apple Valley-based architectural firm that is really a leader in public safety design. We have done large numbers of both studies and fire station designs, additions, remodels of all types around the Minnesota area. So that. Kind of the process that we're kind of starting up in the middle of right now is kind of information gathering, the early stages of that. With that, we've been doing staff interviews and stakeholder feedback, working to, learn more about the process, particularly at Station 2. Obviously, we know a lot about the department overall from our work on Station 1. But we're also looking at developing a good and in-depth understanding of the building and the site that Station 2 sits on, and things related to that existing conditions, evaluating ordinance and requirements for the site, and then, of course, looking at applying and comparing that to fire station design standards of all types, whether it's just national best practices, NFPA standards, building codes, ADA, all the things that go into making a top-notch fire station facility. So, real quickly, the history of this Station 2. It was built in '88, so it's 34 years old. It's about a 13,500 square foot facility. 6 small single-depth apparatus bays, so and back-end approach at the moment. So that's kind of the building that's existing. Obviously we're looking at it in much more detail, but at a high level, that's the outline of that. Guiding principles. I won't go through individually. I will be shortly, but my point on this slide is that we are looking at the current facility and the goals through this lens, as we've talked earlier, of the guiding principles and how that fits. And so that's what I'll be looking at. Under each guiding principle, what are the things we're looking at through this study? So first of all, is it welcoming to the community? So do we have a clear entrance? How does that relate to those coming to have service or connections with the fire department at this location? Is public parking clear and safe? What's that location? Is there sufficient or that connection to the public that we've been able to offer in Station 1? Is there some amount of that opportunity? So is it welcoming? We'll be looking at effective use of space and how is that being met at the station, or what are some of the shortcomings of space use? Flow is really critical for a fire station. Flow of whether it be apparatus or flow of the firefighters, from where they are when a call arrives. So flow is really critical. We'll be looking, in that in a lot more depth. Of course, we'll also be looking at efficient and effective categories in building systems, whether it be mechanical systems, building envelope elements within the building, but just saying, how is that meeting the efficiency and effectivity test? Sustainability, similarly, we'll be inventorying all the existing building systems and seeing, are they efficient users of energy and of other, sustainable features. Analyze that. We'll look at environmental factors on the outside of the site and see, where that fits into current goals, and kind of compare all that into an overlay of lead strategies, much like we did with Station 1. Functional and flexible, and another key guide. So we'll be looking at our space needs being met. Is it functional for the department? Are there shortcomings? What does that look like? What about the future? Are we meeting today's needs? But of course, are we also meeting long-term needs for the city and the department? We'll be looking at how it's organized. Is it does it work well? Is it working well for the staff now? Is it working well in the ways we need to move into the future? And then operational flexibility, are there spaces that can be used to meet more than one need? Is it being, efficient in that way? And of course, is it generally meeting accessibility guidelines as well? Healthy is key, especially in today's, fire department world. The health of firefighters is, critical, and something that's really been, top shelf for the last, 5-10 years, and really a lot of focus on that. So of course, we'll be looking at carcinogen and toxin separation. Are we, decontaminating and removing those contaminants, from the firefighter environment? What's the opportunities there? How is it meeting, the current building meeting those guidelines? Mental health, physical fitness, things like that as well, to maintain a healthy and strong firefighter, and, and support the department that way. Also, kind of similarly, acoustical. There's a lot of aspects between residential areas of the fire station and the operational side, where acoustics is really critical. Is that being met in the facility? In what ways can that be addressed, better? Safe, also very, very important aspect for the fire station operations. For there, we'll be comparing to national NFPA or National Fire Protection Association standards for station design, and looking for making sure that all the best practices for firefighter safety, are being met in the facility in ways that could be improved or looked at. Building codes, of course, we'll be looking at that, and with a goal that in the end, the facility meets a safe, secure, operational environment for the firefighters operating out of there, and for public visiting. And of course, meeting best practices throughout. Very important still, fiscal responsibility. As we are looking at the study, as we develop it near the later options, we'll be looking at how can we meet different goals and as fiscally responsible way as possible, being objective about different choices and what the trade-offs are of that and what costs might be involved. Looking both at current costs, but also what's long-term costs, whether the operational or building costs, so that you have a facility that provides value to the city for many decades to come. And then, of course, balancing those, as always the case with financial goals, is to balance what's the best long-term goal while still minimizing costs and getting the best end result. So with that, those are kind of the way we'll be looking at the study to filter it through the guiding principles. After we kind of get that initial gathering of information portion, done, we'll be looking at, space needs and really developing how big and how many, what are the issues and things that are shortcomings on the facility. We'll analyze the existing building and the systems, and compare it again to that list of things we just went through. And then we'll develop concepts of that. And this is an example of one of the early concepts. It was an early one. It's not how Station 1 ended up, but the idea of just what are those spaces, how might they organize around each other, and what does that mean within a facility. We'll be looking at an option to work with the existing site. And we also know, with some goals of the ability to have drive-through bays, we know that's not a possibility on the existing site. So we'll look at other options that would provide that as an option as well, just so that we had a broad interview of what that might be, and look at both of those approaches. So with that, it's an overview of our approach. So thank you for the opportunity to present it to you. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Councilmember Keeley.
Fire Station 1 is about as ideal as any fire station could be. Given the land circumstances and the building, et cetera, is it feasible to achieve the same safety, health, separation, et cetera, at the Fire Station 2 site?
That's what we'll be looking at. We're not far enough along to really have an answer to that, but that's certainly what we need to be identifying.
Yeah.
It's certainly, I anticipate there'll be some balance on that and then challenges to make that happen. So we'll be looking at it, but that's what what we'll be bringing back the options to evaluate.
Okay,
Councilmember Keely, Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
I think we are far enough along to know that if drive-through bays is the standard, that's not a possibility
Yeah.
at that site.
I
Yeah.
think that's a fair
There's no
assessment,
way.
and I would turn to
the
Chief
land
Ritchie
is
to-
so tight.
Yep.
I've walked that.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I think we know on that site, as you're saying, it's not a
Challenge.
possibility.
Lots of
Too close to lot
challenges.
lines, and then just trying to get the trucks behind that building to come back, I think we know it's not a possibility on that site.
There's a lot of challenges on that site. Vince?
Well, I know we're early, but have you designed buildings up? I mean,
Yeah.
could you go up a third story, then allow it tuck under,
Yeah,
drive-through? Is
we've
that-
It's a drive-through.
looked at that. We just actually are groundbreaking on a project for Bloomington that was very tight
Yeah.
site. And we looked at whether we're going to require a third story. We ended up being able to meet their more limited goals, but meet that with only 2 stories and a basement, a full basement under that portion, but it was close. And we did explore options to go up higher. Then we're looking also at massing and community fit and other things as well, but.
Yeah, because I've looked at that, and Dan and I went on one of the trips to look at fire stations and police stations. Richfield went vertical. And so, I looked at that site, and you say, is it vertical possibility? But when you take into consideration drive-throughs, doesn't work. There's a lot of pieces about that site. If we had the forethought, perhaps 10 years ago, 15 years ago, to buy part of the land that is now townhouses, that would have
Buy
helped
Dairy
us.
Queen,
Huh?
so we can buy Dairy Queen.
The hell you say?
Yeah. No,
Where will we get
no.
our Buster bars?
no, no.
You should have gone wrong with the pony farm one way.
Yeah, no. So the thing is, I appreciate the team that's being put together. Our staff, Greg, you and our leadership team, and we trust you. You're the experts of the delivery system, and you know what we want, that we want to deliver services to our community. And when you bring back your findings with regard to the project, I remember the first facilities study, the next was police, fire, city hall. So when you come back, it'll be interesting to take a look at that. And also, I know the big challenges for Fire Station 2. Because if part of what you're going to do is also find land, that's should be in your, should be part of what you're exploring. Because we, as decision makers, need to know all of that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Madam Mayor, members of the council,
Be big enough.
as I reflect back on Fire Station 1's project, Terry and Chief Jungman were kind of leading a separate analysis of the community and response times and things like that on if old Fire Station 1 site wasn't the right location, if that's what we got to, what were our options? And I know through discussions and early stages, they're looking into those types of things. I think our goal will be, if Station 2 site is the site, what is the best that we can bring forward? If that is not the right site for whatever reason, then, CNH Quinn has been tasked with what is the square footage that we need? What does that, if we do find that land, how do we make sure it's the right size, it has the right needs and
and
things
it's in the
like that?
right location that
Correct.
meets the service area. That's the big thing,
Of course.
And I think that's what we're working on, BJ and myself, is the drive time analysis
Yeah.
through GIS and stuff to make sure it's placed in the right spot if we have to move it.
Because I know that you did that when we were really looking at Fire Station 1. and available land, and where was it? And then, of course, the infrastructure needs around all of that. So we were lucky to find the property on Newton. Now, I've driven around our community to take a look and see what is available. Unless we took some parkland.
Or Riverview.
But
Mayor and Council, I have absolutely been in conversation with both Terry and BJ along with Garrett. This project will allow us to look at those options and get you the information, the data that you need to make good policy decisions, whether it be about Fire Station 2, the order of these projects, or back to your budget conversation just last Tuesday. Right now, we have a $26 million placeholder. This work through June, when you'll see both BKV and CNH back in front of you, will allow us the opportunity to get that information and data in front of you, not only on Fire Station 2, but on the potential of a City Hall project, as well as the potential or the needs from
the City Hall project.
As well as the maintenance facility.
Yeah.
Good news is that we have built a lot of buildings over the years in this city, and we're pretty experienced at it, so I'm really looking forward to the recommendations coming to us.
Yeah. So what I'm saying to you tonight, and this will take some community engagement, if you're going to look at some of our property and what's available, might be some parkland. Because there's not much around.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, we've had discussions on that. There are certainly some challenges on at least one of the nearby pieces of park property. But that doesn't mean that, at the end of the day, our goal is to bring back something that could be successful on the current site.
That's
And
all of what
also-
all I'm just saying is that, there are opportunities. We just have to think differently about all of this, and get it done. Because I know the site that we have now, not going to meet the highest and best use and excellence of service that we expect.
Mayor, to your point.
Proposing a swap so that the current fire station would then become a park and then
Heck, we can do anything we want, Vince.
anything?
Councilmember Workman, Mayor, Council, I think.
Well, if we can do anything, I got a wish list.
I think.
No, just about this, just about.
That's a good point, Vince. And I probably have driven our team a little bit nuts because I'm pushing for a pretty high level of creativity as we think about these needs and we think about the information and the data that we bring back to you on all three of these projects. Knowing that at the end of the day, we need to inform a good policy decision from the council on what the future of our facilities fund, the placeholder we currently have, and the impacts that has, not only on your budget, but at the end of the day, on our service delivery to the community. That's what we'll use the next several weeks to do, and get back to you again in June as we've committed at your work session.
Well, being that we're in redevelopment mode in this city, I wouldn't say it would be out of bounds to look at just other properties if there's a reasonable buy somewhere for us to.
Councilmember Gustafson heard absolutely, and Chief Johnman and Chief Ritchie are working diligently with the project team, and we'll work with CNH to.
Heck, we looked at some properties for Fire Station 1 and some that were way out of bound in terms of what they wanted. It was like,
If you
what?
remember, we looked at 9 different properties,
Yeah.
we did drive time analysis on all of them, and we're kind of, like I said, we've looked just a small window, looked at, is there any property around, and there's a few but we have no drive time analysis yet, anything of that nature that Chief Jungman wants to do still, so. Before we get it to the team and back in front of you guys.
And we trust you. You've done some great work and with Fire Station 1 and other things that we've done. And you know what? You set the bar high. We expect that and more.
And when you build the nicest fire station in the Midwest, it's hard to top that.
Agreed. Yeah, don't bring us a shack now.
Yeah.
That's right. Exactly right.
Yeah. But, it'll be great to see the facilities needs all of it, okay? There are some of us who have long memories. So
thank you very much. And we have a great group of people working on it, 2 great consultants, and we look forward to getting you more information and moving this along, so.
I'm really happy that when I look at the complement of the staff team, that we have community engagement, the communications team. Why? In this day and age, it's important for us to communicate, and let our people know what's going on. We've set that bar high.
And we will continue to strive to make it higher.
Okay. And I trust you will. Okay. Anything else, council members? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Nice work.
Nice work. Okay. Reports. Vince, you have anything?
I'm gonna let our chair go over some fire muster highlights. Other than that, I have nothing.
Okay.
Yes, found out today that Jim Satterlin is leaving America Inn, so he'll be leaving the CVB, and he's our chair, so.
Oh, wow.
Fortunately, we have our meeting next week, so we'll be able to discuss all that.
Yeah.
So that's interesting,
And the vice chair is,
Oh, God, I can't remember offhand, to be honest with you.
yeah.
So the other thing is on our citizen task force. You probably have already seen in our preliminaries, we're gonna be looking at the liquor ordinance coming up. Just to make you all aware that that's coming back to us with a split vote. It was a tie vote.
Yeah.
And what they're discussing is, where the split came in, is whether it should still be single buildings and whether we should still have our 3/4 mile
Distance.
limits. And that's where,
Yeah.
I was
what
kind of
I'm-
surprised when it happened, but that's coming back to us. So it's gonna be a discussion,
Yeah.
just so everyone's aware.
And I've heard from the license holders.
What's that?
And I've heard from the license
Well, I'm
holders.
sure you have. I'm
Yeah.
sure you have. And they were actually at one of the meetings we had.
Yeah,
I thought we just discussed that, but
we
2 or
did.
3 years
We did.
ago.
We did.
But
We
we have
did.
a task force now.
Yeah,
Here we go again.
yeah,
Oh, we got lots of stuff coming.
Yeah.
Trust me.
yeah, okay.
We
Kara.
make the massages.
I'm ready for that one.
I'm sure you are.
So really the big thing is, and I don't have anything to report yet because it has not happened, but tomorrow the DBB meets. The county is doing a presentation at that, and I think after we get that presentation, we might be on a little firmer ground for knowing what's happening, and then we can go from there.
Okay, good, yeah. And I want to thank, really great reporting, Greg, with everything that's coming out of the DBB and sending us the information that came from the county, because that allows us to really be on top of it as we continue to move forward. Yeah, because that was, it was, they had it that they were going to make a decision and then they backed off. And so, and the slides gave some good reasoning why they are taking some time.
Along with Councilmember Schultz, Tom Venables is doing a great job of
Yes,
working
he
with
is.
our partners and the DBB board, as well as the county and other agencies. So we'll continue to do that.
Yeah, thank you. Councilmember Keely. Boy, you guys
Everybody
over
got
there at the MVTA, what? I look at
good
all
idea.
the things, so all of these letters of support to get money from the feds, is that all part, that bus garage board
Oh, the new boardroom, yeah, that was actually done months ago, with other.
completed months ago?
Yeah, completed months ago. It's been waiting for us to come back in person.
Really beautiful.
We had our STA meeting there at the Burnsville Bus Garage in the new room at a conference table that's in front of the new board dais, and it's pretty nice. It's reminiscent of ours, only in a
Yeah.
darker wood. That's very nice. STA, MVTA Express service is slowly coming back, but we got a long way to go. MVTA Connect expansion in Eagan, the on-demand Uber type. We expanded that into the Eagan area, and it is almost instantly 48% of all of our micro transit trips.
How is it in Burnsville? Because I see it all over,
Oh, yeah,
all
you see
over
the buses driving
Burnsville.
all over,
See it
but
everywhere.
we were really surprised that the expansion up into Eagan ended up being, the demand is
Higher?
unbelievable. Oh, yeah,
More so than Burnsville?
yes, much more than Burnsville. It's literally half of all MVTA microtransit trips are in Eagan. And we have all of Savage, Burnsville, and Eagan was the latest expansion, and instantly it exploded in demand.
You know, one of the things that I think that MVTA could do a little bit more of is more communication of all of the Connect service
Yes.
here in Burnsville.
Marketing is it's always a challenge in a public transit operation. It's not like they have a huge marketing budget, but they do incorporate a lot of digital marketing and, of course, bus wraps and social
Yeah.
media. But you know, you're not gonna see ads on network TV or anything like that. But so along that lines, however, a very exciting announcement. We just approved funding, investing in a brand-new MVTA app, which brings together the on-demand and the MVT bus. However, it also integrates rideshare services. So a person could say, I'm here, and I need to go here, and that might involve getting picked up by an MVTA Connect bus, being taken to the transit station to ride a bus, and then being picked up by an Uber to take them to their final destination, all inside one app. This was an idea that I pushed really hard for myself, actually, at our retreat several years ago, about 5 years ago. And I just said, I look at things through the guest experience, purely what is going to be the most logical and easiest for me as a transit rider to go from point A to point B when I'm crossing different transit lines, or I need to be picked up at my house because maybe I've got mobility challenges and I can't get to the transit station because I'm not going to drive. So how do we get that person there, and then how do we get them to their final destination? And what's the last mile look like if the last mile is a significant distance from the last bus stop? So this new app was innovated by the Dallas Area Transit Authority, and they innovated it, and now they have built it to where they're reselling it to other transit providers around the country. And so we just voted on that at our last meeting, and I was super excited. I said, well, let me make the motion to approve, because this is a big day, because this is a huge improvement for the rider and convenience, all in one app. And the payment would be, so even though they might be taking an Uber, either on the first leg or the last mile, all of that would be paid for, integrated through the app. So
nice.
it's a one
So
system.
one click.
Yeah, it's one click, mapping a route and paying. So it's really, really gonna be awesome. We also, through Met Council funding, Met Transit, Met Council funding, we're buying 10 additional ticket vending machines. We only have one, and we've only had one for quite a while at the Burnsville Transit Station. Now there will be ticket vending machines at all of MVTA transit stops, which Southwest was very interested in doing the same thing, so we did some collaboration with them, and they're going to reach out and follow a similar path. But Luther paved the road for the other ones to be able to take advantage of this opportunity to get these ticket vending machines installed. Just something that Met Transit was doing for all of their transit stations, but we weren't getting as suburban transit providers, but we now are getting. The other thing is, we had a discussion about EV charging stations. MVTA, it was actively interested in pursuing a couple different models for putting in EV charging stations. So I said, ironically, we had just talked about this with the presentation to the city council.
With our partner.
And I gave Luther, the city, the Carbon Solutions contact and information, and passed along our background materials, and for them to pursue discussions with them as well. Because obviously EV charging stations at transit garages make sense, because their car is going to likely be sitting there for a while, so plugging it in so it's fully charged when they get back. And I mentioned the new board. TAB, I gave that update because we had our work session late in March. Our next TAB meeting's in a couple weeks. NLC, TIS, Advanced Air Mobility, and the MnDOT NASA Advanced Air Mobility have not met since we last talked. There's been 2 meetings canceled by the MnDOT NASA work group. They were just really at the tail end of all of these 4-hour block work sessions developing the governance. And so I think they're churning through all that, and I expect that we'll have a meeting at some point in the near future. Actually, the NLC TAS AAM meeting, which it goes by a different name, but it's all the same. In 2022, they rerouted that. Their essentially their advanced air mobility and drone subcommittee, and they came up with the TIS committee came up with 3 new subcommittees, and intergovernmental communications was one that I signed up for, and Brittany, our liaison from NLC, said she would explain how they're going to integrate the AAM into the work that we're doing. But we just had our first meeting with introductions of all the members, and we got a lot of new members, a few more members from the state of Minnesota. At one point, there weren't very many of us. I think I was the only one at some point, but now there's 4 maybe or 5 members from Minnesota. It's great to see other folks from other cities join that particular committee. And then on the festival, I think did you give a pretty robust update the last meeting? I remember providing.
I wasn't here the last.
I think you
time.
did.
Crib
Yeah,
notes.
you gave a very, very
okay, that was the crib
comprehensive.
I was on Zoom.
Oh, you were
Yeah.
on Zoom, that's right.
Yeah.
You deferred.
You gave a pretty comprehensive.
Yeah.
We could skip fire muster this.
I just would remind everybody in the audience, because we have thousands of people tuning in, that the new Fire Muster, BurnsvilleFiremuster.org website is up and live.
Beautiful.
And
It's now
there's a lot of information on
Community
it.
Festival and Fire Muster.
It is the Burnsville Festival and Fire
Fire
Muster.
Muster.
We still have the URL, the old URL. We can only build Rome in, a few days. That will evolve, and that will change in the future. Right after this year's event, we will be changing our URL. But the Burnsville Festival is the new brand. Fire Muster is always going to be a part of it because we're always going to have fire trucks, and the Fire Muster will really associate to the fire truck display and all of the fire safety and our fire department, all that kind of stuff. But the Burnsville Festival is really the umbrella that encompasses everything with the carnival, the music, the beer, our international stage, et cetera, et cetera. So really excited about our shuttle service. I really think we're gonna market that very heavily because parking is a major problem. Mobility, folks who have mobility challenges, parking in, let's say they get a spot at the church. So now they have to walk from 130th and Nicollet, down Nicollet, and then all the way down Civic Center to the other, well, about halfway down, to get to the festival grounds, to finally get to where the music and the movie, or the food and the beverages are, and the merchandise, and the carnival and everything. They can pull their car into the Burnsville Transit Station, walk a short distance, get on a wheelchair accessible bus, every one of them. Most of them are going to be 40-footers, and they'll be driven to the festival grounds and dropped off right in front of the ice center, right smack in the middle of where the food, the music, and the beverages are.
So they
it's gonna
will
be
have
fabulous.
access from Nicollet, so the bus will go,
Down to 134th.
from the
and then
backside.
From
on
the backside, right,
yeah.
and then come in the ice center loop.
Yeah.
Drop
And
them
then-
off,
and then exit that
pick
way.
up others that are
So
leaving.
they're not going to be in the front where there's a lot of activity
Yeah.
and all congestion.
It'll take some
Safe.
pressure off the Nicollet
Yeah.
Civic Center intersection, which is always a challenge, and it'll also allow.
That's a good route. It's away from all.
Yes.
It'll be safer. that way.
And for vendors can come in that back way as well and drop their stuff off and leave, and they'll stay out of the congested
gate.
Nicollet and Civic Center, which we
Yeah.
really want people to stay away from that. There's still a lot of people
Because a
that
lot of
walk in that way.
pedestrians, yeah.
Yeah, that's the big main sidewalk entrance.
Yeah.
But we don't want a lot of truck and vendor
Yeah.
and car traffic. So for, those with mobility challenges, folks in wheelchairs, walkers, scooters, or just, cane, they don't have to really walk hardly at all. Just get out of their car and get on a bus and be dropped off right in the middle of where everything is. So, big improvement on that. So I think that's worth announcing.
We'll still have golf carts at the ready if somebody's going up, like we
Yes.
usually do.
Okay. Our Burnsville Community Foundation, we're meeting on Thursday, and we're doing a strategic plan as we look forward and really understand, do we have this right mission? What's the vision for the future for the Burnsville Community Foundation? So I'll have more to report after that meeting. And the International Festival is going well, doing good with fundraising, because we need to get all of that done, and all of the people with the different aspects, from the cultural to the entertainment to the children's activities and all of that. So everybody's working hard, and we'll have more to report. Okay? And the other meetings are all that are on my list they're all quarterly. We haven't met, MLC hasn't met. Metro Cities, their policy meeting is coming up, and that's going to be virtual. So anyway, that's all I have. Greg, do you have anything?
I don't have anything, Mayor, Council.
Okay. Erica, anything from city clerk's side?
I do not.
Okay. With that, we stand adjourned by acclamation. Thank you very much, and it's the first time in a long time that we're adjourning after 2 hours, 7:30.
Almost could say under 2 hours.
Yeah.